I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the overall customer journey because I think this ties into our main topic today around lead magnets. We'll touch on some other things like LinkedIn posts and things like that along the way. But all in all, what I want to sort of move people through is how do you go from people on LinkedIn seeing your posts to being more interested in you and having a way to say, hey, look, you are somebody that I want to really engage with, to then finally making the final decision of buying whatever you offer, right? So all of us today go through this journey today where we have to sort of think about how do I educate myself on the problem that I have? And I have to somewhat self-identify, and whether that's through scrolling and you saying or posting the right thing, or it's you offering something that then gets me to move to that next step. But in this phase, we're still in the awareness phase. And what I call people in this phase, and the most part in terms of my business, is that they are lurkers. They're somebody that normally is in the background. I know that they're there. I may even know their name, may have talked to them on the phone, or maybe they get other stuff that I put out, but they may not fully understand everything that I could do for them to help them with their business. Whenever it comes down to this next phase, though, they're actually doing that decisioning, right? So they're getting to that level of, okay, so I know that one business could solve my problem, but potentially another business and another solution might solve it better. How do I make that decision? And how do I, as the business owner, put things in front of you that show you that I would be the better choice? And again, to me, I tell people this all the time. I'm one of the worst salespeople in the world. And so I use trust to build a relationship with people so that I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to push you in my direction. And I don't think that sales strategy works all that well for people either. I think a lot of people agree with this idea that, hey, look, you should be building trust and awareness well ahead of actually getting to the bottom line and having people, come to you and say, hey, look, I have a problem. Now, I would say in the last couple of months, so November was the first one, and last night was the second one. I've had significant leads, I'll just put it that way, come to me ready to buy. So somehow they've not signed up for my community here. They've not been a part of anything else that I've done. They've not been on phone calls with me ahead of time. And now all of a sudden they're at this bottom stage. Now, whether that's luck or by design, I think is something that we could, sort of debate. But I think a part of this is sort of thinking ahead of what does your content do for you and how does it lead people in that natural path. The last couple of these calls, I've sort of talked about the fact that digital visibility by the way, this is a SaaS platform that I created for my mastermind group who's currently beta testing this. But digital visibility is what content does for you. It gets that initial set of eyeballs on the thing that you do and the thing that you might solve. Then you have strategic network building. Specifically on LinkedIn, how do you focus the leads that you are focused on and making sure that the people that you're most interested in are the people that you're targeting? So whether that's through Apollo.io or it's through Linked Helper and building a network, using Sales Navigator on LinkedIn, all of those are decisions that can be made along the way. But this idea of strategic network building is something that all of us should be doing. Then you have the relationship building. At some point, you want to try and get to a point where you're actually building a relationship with these folks and you're trying to move forward in this as well. At some point as well, I want to get people off of social media. I don't want them on social media because I don't control that audience. I want them in my email newsletter. I want, to have live phone calls with them. I want to do things to actually move people off of social media because again, they can cut you off at any point in time. And next thing you know, you have no leads. And so this platform transition is a critical piece of this. The live connection also is really important. Having the discovery calls with people and diagnosing their problems is also important. And then pipeline management. But how do I get people, once they're a connection of mine on social media or they're starting to see my stuff, how do I get them to raise their hand and say, I'm here? I'm visible to you. I believe one of the best ways to do this is through lead magnets. And so that's what I wanted to talk about, today, is to discuss, lead magnets and ways that you could build lead magnets, and how people should be thinking about lead magnets. And in my free community, one of the things that I will be providing links to as well is just links to a couple of different tools that you can use with your business to try and start thinking about this conversation of lead magnets. So the first one is a custom GPT around building that conversion. So if you think about it, let's say that somebody is a connection on LinkedIn and they want to get better exposure with regards to their content. So they're engaging with me anyway, but they don't know what that next step is, and they don't want to go all the way as far as a discovery call, right? Because I'm pretty far along in my commitment if I'm going to get on the phone with you and have a discovery call. So what are things that I could create and offer to them? Well, I could create like a small webinar around a training class, or I could create a 5-day email sort of session for people. So essentially, I just created one, or clicked one of the buttons at the top of this GPT and said, look, I would like to take a look at possibly creating a webinar magnet for my business, where I could turn one webinar into a predictable lead engine as well. So you could take a full length webinar and cut it up into smaller pieces and possibly use that as a lead magnet. You could have an email thing that solves some sort of problem in a very small way, step by step, goes day by day or week by week, sends people an email, says, hey, carry out this step. If these sort of things don't really resonate with you, though, because all of us are at a different point, the other thing I built, this is a second custom GPT that I'll be offering along with this session, where it's more of a strategist, right? Somebody to sit with you and say, hey, look, here's my business. What are the things I should be considering? So, just as an example, right? If I just said, let me just dictate it back to the AI here for a second. I run a digital marketing agency, and I'm interested in finding additional clients that would be interested in lead magnets for content marketing. So people that would be in small to medium-sized businesses, people that are looking to use content to drive additional focus on their particular business. And so let's just let that process there. And then now I'll drop it in, and the GPT will run. What it more or less does is it comes up with like all of these different components of ways that you should be thinking about in the current year for your business with regards to lead magnets. And I would, again, sort of, if I go back to our funnel, right, you still have to have educational materials. So whenever I think about educational material, it's very top of the funnel, and it's less focused, let's say, on one individual problem, but more broadly, what problems do you particularly solve? Then as you come down into the lead magnets, these could be ones that help them make a choice. It could be ones that help them actually carry out part of your methodology. So any one of those things could actually help people with regards to content. So on the executive summary side, you see here, ideal lead magnet client is already convinced content matters, but they're frustrated by one of two realities. They create content, but it doesn't convert, or they want to scale content, but they just can't justify the effort. So as we were talking before the call, right, I kind of, number two is where I solely was. This is the problem that I started with whenever I created my own agency. Like, look, I don't have time to sit every single day and post 2 to 3 times a day. And then whenever I have something, I want to be able to have my audience warm enough that whenever I post, the algorithm already knows who engages with my stuff. And the only way for that to happen, in my belief, is by consistently posting. And so, you kind of think about, for me, this was where I started personally. And then, I was trying to figure out, like, how do I solve this problem myself, and built the agency around it. You can see then the audience insights here. Their top 10 pain points, goals, fears, and emotional drivers are that they post consistently, but leads are random. Their website gets traffic, but nobody converts. And all of these things are things that, again, content can help with. As you sort of get down to the bottom, my favorite thing about this thing is that it says, here are the top 10 ranked options for your business on a lead magnet idea, right? So these are things that the AI has been informed of, that, hey, look, these are things that might actually help you find people to convert. So the content ROI calculator with some sort of personalized output, right? So again, it could be, an AI tool that fits that. A lead magnet fit quiz could be another good one as well for people. And so you kind of think about, this tool can help you sort of focus that effort on, all right, so now how do I take this and then convert it back? Here's what I would do. So after I get this, I would say, I'm most interested in, let's just say this, the lead magnet fit quiz. I'm most interested in this particular lead magnet. Could you help me really understand how I could implement this particular idea, and maybe even help me outline an execution plan for it? And I'm going to paste in the name of the tool for it, by the way. So I'm going to have to delete this because it copied that last little bit into my clipboard. So I'm going to have to drop this back in here. All done on the fly. So there you go. So now it's off thinking about, how to come up with an implementation plan for this. And I personally do this quite frequently with AI, where I'm like, okay, so how do I actually go do the thing that I want to do? The one thing I would tell people, I saw that it came up with Typeform as a potential, thought. Look, if you're trying to go quick and dirty in terms of a tool like this, I mean, I might even look at like Google Forms, or, Typeform certainly is inexpensive. But if you have a CRM of any kind, I would first focus there, right? You want whatever people are answering to be captured in a way that you can reuse it over and over again. And whether that's in an initial questionnaire that you ask people or whatever, you want to capture those elements. And then that way you can reuse it later whenever you have problems like these that you're trying to solve. So you see, pick one, pick your quiz positioning. What's the promise, right? So what lead magnet will work best for your business? The outcome here could be a lead magnet type and funnel plan that you could offer back to people. You could also offer them back, bottleneck fix and lead magnet recommendation. So it depends on what you want to do. And then essentially what you do with this is you say, hey, look, I want number one and number two. And then, oh, by the way, I want you to help me write the quiz in a way that I can actually go implement it on one of these tools, right? So I try and put as much of this work back on the tool. And then lastly, you kind of see the follow-up here is the email segmentation for you is where this is really where the money is. Because one of the things that I've heard is that, a lot of us don't value enough the follow-up and the value in the follow-up. To me, the follow-up really starts with this. It's, how do you show somebody that quick win? How do you get them real results? Because if they could prove to themselves that, hey, look, this thing actually resulted in something that was of value to me, and oh, by the way, I want to move to that next step. Now that's really where the value of all of this comes together. So let's just say in this case, right? And I have my example that I'm going to use today which is my own recent assessment. I put together like a content assessment, right? So it goes through and more or less takes a look at how are you using content in your business to then move it further towards this lead generation system. So needless to say, I used a lot of my own tools to develop this thing, right? So you go through this assessment. As you move through, you're not going to be asked for your email address or anything. I don't, in this part of the process, I personally am not asking you for anything. So what I want you to do though is if you take this assessment and you see value in it and you want to then book a call, that's where I want you to come down here and actually book a call. So again, as a business leader, you have to decide, like, are you going to put up a wall where you say, hey, look, I'm going to ask for emails and not allow anybody in? There's certainly AI tools that I have where it's charging me credits, it's charging me things to actually offer it to somebody. I'm not going to let somebody in unless they provide an email address because they're probably not either far enough along or might not even be a very good fit for my business in the first place. Then there are other tools that I want to offer on the outside of that where, hey, look, if you want to come down here, you want to book a call, that, this is where I actually get the lead, right? So people that take this to me are going to be that in that lurker category. They're going to fall outside of where I can actually see them, other than the fact that they've taken an assessment and that it's been scored, right? So I've got ways to get the answers back here. But the minute that you click this and you try and book a call, now all of a sudden I've got a way to track you because you're going to give me your email address and phone number to actually book a meeting with me. So now that I have this, so let me come back to this page one more time. And this goes back to where David, you and I were talking just before we got started recording here. So if I go back here and I say, hey, I want to start a post and I want to create a post that more or less focuses on this thing, and I'm going to post it as a link inside of link. The thing to understand is, like, let's say if I type my message here, like whatever it is, and then I add my picture. Let me just find a picture for it. So this is the picture for the assessment itself. If I add that picture and I don't post a link, what happens is the post actually looks like what's on the screen. The minute that I embed the link, though, it will shrink this post. It'll shrink like the overall post itself. So less of it's going to show. And I'm going to demonstrate this in both ways here. So I'm going to do this again live. So let me just come back to a tab. I'm going to open up ChatGPT just really quickly so we could use it for creating a message. I want to create a LinkedIn post using 2026 best practices for LinkedIn that includes a call to action, but also has a very strong hook at the very top of it without including any sort of links for the post. Essentially, what I want to send people to is a waves assessment that I've created where people could understand the value of using content to create leads for their business on LinkedIn. All right, so that's that, and it'll create the post here. So it looks to me like it could be using one of the things I oftentimes also ask for anymore is I just ask it, to make it so that it doesn't have all this bolded text in here because oftentimes it doesn't show up. Now there is a way to actually do that as well, and I'll show you it in a second. But let me just try and post this text first. Let's see if this comes in or not. So if you look at this, it's all flat. It's not. There's no bolded text or anything like that. But watch this just for a second. So if I delete that version and I come back and I grab the text again and I say, give me the text in Unicode. Now, when this thing formats, no. So I want it still with the bolded. the challenge whenever you're trying to do something live and it's all,
All good. It's
exactly
all good.
prepared. But there you go. We got that. And now whenever I paste this back in here, it should have come in. It should have had the bolded text. That's interesting. I'm still not seeing. Go. Yeah, so now it didn't apply Unicode like I asked it. That's what it admitted just there. So there we go. For sure, this one looks like it's correct. So now whenever I pull it in there, it's going to have bolded text where, LinkedIn doesn't have it. And I don't know about anybody else, but I sort of like it when it looks like that, when it's got a, really nice look to it. So must have grabbed the wrong tab. No. What makes it easier? All right. There we go.
Wow.
Look at that. So now, like as I space these things out, all of a sudden the formatting looks a little easier to read. And at least for me, this is a little more attractive. I mean, it looks to me like they added some extra spaces or something there for the bullets. And then I'm not going to have people comment waves. I'm going to actually have see my comment below for the link. So I'm going to paste it this way. And then what I'm going to do is I have to come back here and grab where that thing actually is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and post this version this way. And then I'll create another one, which I'll delete in just a second, but I want you to see this one. So this is how this one looks, right? Really bright picture. Most businesses don't have a lead problem. Might catch my eye. I could have deleted this extra space here. They have a content to lead problem. And now all of a sudden, people might want to know what that is. Here is the link to the assessment. And there we go. So now they can go get the assessment. What this did right here, this is exactly the way a post comes up, and you'll see this in just a second. But whenever I post a link, it does this little tiny picture kind of thing with a little bit of text, and it really just doesn't pop like this. I mean, whenever I see this, I'm more likely to read it, more likely to click. So let me create a version that is the other way and just show you what that would look like. So I'm gonna first post the link because that's in my clipboard. Here is the link. We'll start with that, and then we'll go back and grab the rest of our post, just so people can get an idea of how this actually comes across. All right, so look at that. It did that. Now I can't tell yet how this thing is going to look, and I think this is a bit of a LinkedIn trick because it gets you to, if you don't know these things, it gets you to go ahead and post it or whatever. But all right, so I'm going to delete the additional spaces. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to make sure it looks somewhat similar to the one that we posted a second ago. But again, I'm doing this thinking that I'm going to come back and delete this thing in just a second. So there we go. There's that one. There's that. Now, whenever I post this, look at the difference. This little tiny guy, that one has a link. It's going to take you off the platform. They don't love me as much.
Right.
This one has a nice big picture, draws your attention. To me, I just sort of look at this and I go, yep, I know which one I would want. And so it's the reason why, I mean, inside of our scheduling software and our platform, whenever we tell the AI to write posts for people, it's like, write this post, but don't include any links. And then inside of the software, it allows you to provide the first comment, and that first comment, you can still put the link in there. to do it. So there is a bit of a way to do it on the other side, but again, these are the reason not to post links, I think, is because one, the algorithm doesn't treat it the same. And number two, it sort of gets you to that point of like shrinking your post into this little tiny thing that honestly nobody's probably going to stop at and look at anyway. I just thought maybe I might be able to spot it again. Any questions?
No, so far very clear.
All right. Well, let me come back to my slides for today and just have a quick look at what we run through so far. So let's talk a little bit about some of these things. So I talked a little bit about the funnel a second ago. Let's bring this up in presentation mode. So I talked a little bit about the funnel a second ago, right? We really know that those initial people that come in are really, looking at your stuff. They're not going to come in and just, convert right away, right? They're coming in to look at your things and try and understand who you are and things like that. We are going to move through awareness and interest and desire and then action, right? So we need to get people further and further down the funnel to be able to actually implement something to then get them to that point. I have had a lot of people tell me, but I offer a demo on my website of my software, or I offer, something that at the end of the day would be very bottom of the funnels sort of offerings. And one example would be booking a discovery call with you as the bottom of the funnel. Booking a demo is the bottom of the funnel. And keeping all of that in mind is really important for anybody that is considering, how their business might work. The advantage could be you could use a lead magnet that, let's say, is a quiz that helps people understand what you're offering, is and how it might be better. I have one client who offers soundproofing. And in that client's business, we're talking about offering lead magnets that help people understand that his business is actually different. The way to do that is, I believe, offering a lead magnet that quizzes you on the ways that we know that other contractors that do soundproofing can come through and try and shortcut the cost equation and say, hey, look, I'm gonna add these kinds of materials. Well, maybe those materials don't exactly soundproof the same way that other people do. Well, those sort of decision guides are middle of the funnel kind of things, right? They're moving people towards that stage of making the final decision. So just keeping that in mind and thinking about what kinds of lead magnets you might offer, I think is something that every business should also do. A lead magnet, I didn't define this in the beginning, but really it is a valuable or free resource that's offered really to try and get you to the point of, giving up your email address. Things that I know don't work today are free guides or pamphlets. Those sort of things most people don't want to give their email address up for unless you've demonstrated it in a way where all of a sudden this thing might actually be of value to me. One sort of caveat in this that I have seen recently, especially at the start of a year, is a study of an industry coming into a year. So if you have a particular industry that you focus on, and you can analyze that industry as you're coming out of a year and offer that, hey, look, if you want my 2026 assessment of the state of the union of this, then, give me your email address. That might be of value, but again, you have to have a reputation. The value that people see in whatever research that you did has to actually be there. So all of that has to come together. The formats that people offer today, again, like static PDFs, really most people aren't going to give up their email address for. Courses and GPTs, quizzes, calculators, all those sort of things, definitely are things that people would consider. I'm working right now with a client developing a custom AI lead magnet. And so that lead magnet for them have a brain that only considers the things that they want to offer in their particular market. And then whenever you think about the format, you want to try and think about, what is it that somebody actually, wants, but also how are you going to get the things that you need? Because, if you're offering a thing, you might need the ability to try and create, different things. I personally would use AI for a lot of the sort of troubleshooting and possibly some of the research. Different models. Let's say if you're collecting research to do math or ROI and things like that, I might go to a model like Perplexity versus something like Claude or ChatGPT, just based on the fact that it's going to use more references and provide me those references, and I can do some assessment about, is this actually real or is it something that, more hypothetical. I also would challenge the AI that, hey, look, I don't want anything that's hypothetical. I want something that's more real world, because at the end of the day, if your thing doesn't provide a real result, it's only going to create a bigger gap between you and the potential client you want to have. So you want to consider, that as well as you're developing this. So,
Don, can you go back a slide for a second? Because you said something very interesting. And I'm looking here and you're saying, and I'm looking at the bottom thing, like, so the traditional guides, white papers, you're done. You're saying forget about it. The people aren't doing it. Yeah, I could do the quizzes, but you're suggesting custom reports, strategy generators, like, so am I building out like a GPT for them to say, hey, put your stuff in here and it'll knock something out for you?
exactly. Yeah, whether it's a GPT for them. Um, I mean, look, somebody gave me a Word document earlier today in one of the conversations that I had, and said, hey, look, we'd like to develop an AI assessment. And I said, but in addition to that, I would also consider, like, could you have, like an HTML page, a web page that offers the same result, but no AI involved? And they said, well, yeah. I mean, so my thought, is like, as you're doing these, go to a platform like Claude and say, hey, could you help me develop an HTML web page that would present this kind of result? And here's the quiz. Here's how I would assess it, and then provide it to it. It will give you back an HTML page you can either embed in your website, and it would actually write the instructions for you on how to do it if you wanted to do it that way. We of course use Go High Level for all this stuff, right? So what I typically do is I take that HTML, we embed it back in a code block back inside of Go High Level, and then we'll put all your branding around it, right? So we'll make it look like here's your brand, your website, etc. And then in the bottom, we'll put a little button in the bottom that says, hey, on top of taking the assessment, I'd like to schedule a call, or I'd like to understand more about, the next steps. Who knows? I mean, maybe somebody takes it and they're that far along. I still, would not discount it. If somebody's just taking a basic quiz, I would not discount the fact that they could still be very middle of the funnel, just not at that last step. Now, the nice thing is on these AI tools, again, so like if you're doing a custom GPT, you can, embed it somewhere where somebody, provides you their email address. You could also, one of the tactics one of my other clients uses on an actual custom GPT is that on his social media posts, he says, by the way, if you DM this thing to me, I will give you my custom GPT that has this really big result, right? And from doing that, he's gotten actual leads. Because then, inside of Go High Level, we have this ability to monitor at least Instagram and Facebook, and that's where he is. And whenever they send a message that has that, it automatically replies with the GPT, and it adds that person back to a funnel. So immediately that person's in their pipeline to start the process of, okay, well, they're far enough along to want this thing. Let me just make sure that I stay top of mind for them and keep moving them along, right? And so the thing that I would be careful about with GPT is making them public in a way that people can just automatically find them without giving up anything. And secondly, you want them to have to provide their information so that you at least know who they are and can add them in your CRM.
Okay, because that sounds pretty advanced. So I'm just looking at, for example, when you're, I again, I'm going to use me as the example because that's more of my relevance, and hopefully people watching this recording might get something out of this. But if I'm looking at trying to get people to share with me information,
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great maybe to put a GPT in place, but is that I'm just trying to think of how aggressive or is there something lighter to get them before they get to, like, do you go like how should one kind of look at that? Because like what you got, for example, is you got an assessment.
Yeah. So the idea here for me was, so let's just say they have a basic website, it's not optimized, et cetera. Let's move on. I'm going to keep answering these, right?
Yeah.
So then you can kind of see the final result, because I mean, from my standpoint, like, hey, look, how often do you post? What do I do to actually get video content out? Are there things that, that I try to do to just stay top of mind, with people? And, the whole idea around this wasn't to like flood people with questions. Cause again, like I rapidly get question fatigue. I had somebody recently say, hey, look, I have a 5-question survey. Then at 15 questions, they get through things, and I'm still at a point where I'm like, okay, so I don't really have what I wanted. Now give me what I wanted out of this. But you see, in the end, right, you want it to look nice. You want it to sort of provide a good result for them so that they understand, like, where do I stand? If everything says I'm middle of the road, maybe I'm not going to contact you at this point. If you provide an actual result. So my idea around this was, again, not to have that upfront friction. And I also am very careful whenever it comes to forms, because let's say if I ask you first name, last name, email address, phone number, social security card, credit card number, I mean, we all get fatigued by that. So normally, like a lot of times on these things, look, I'd just ask you for, maybe first name and email, and, tell you, hey, look, after you take it, I'm going to send you the assessment and a couple of things that'll help you with some of these things. Right. So hopefully from their perspective, it's of value. So that might be a way that I could, get somebody to actually give up their email address for this. But in this case, I was just trying to get to that first point of like, hey, look, I probably got a lot of people that are coming to the website that still don't understand, how do I use content to actually move things along using your strategy.
Interesting.
So from your perspective, I would say the same thing. And this is where I was coming back to like high level. I mean, I don't know a lot of other CRMs, but let me just sort of step through, like, if I were to create a brand new funnel, so let's just call this a lead magnet funnel. And I don't have anything. I mean, again, we're doing this live and on the fly, but if I wanted to, I could have used AI and all that stuff to try and generate things. I'm not going to do that. But let's just say this one's the initial form page, and so all I'm going to have on this page is like my logo, the form, and then it's going to move to the next step. So I'm going to go create from blank in here. And then the very first step at the very top, I'm going to say form. And I'm going to pick a random form, by the way. So anybody that's watching, I didn't have something pre-made, but I didn't drag it over. So now it's going to say select my form. So let's just say my digital business card form. So full name, phone number, email address. Let's say we met somewhere, and this would be the digital business card version of that. It's asking me for my SEO data. Again, not going to fill that in because for demo. And then from there, I could publish this thing out, and I could say, hey, look, I'm going to publish it under my contentgenius.digital domain. But this is the first step in that funnel. So I'm going to save this guy, make sure it's saved. The next step, so this is where I would add that custom GPT.
Right.
And now let me grab the actual one from this guy. Lead Magnet Strategy Pro. This is him. There we go. Good luck to anybody that's copying all that nonsense on the screen, not signing up for my community, which would be easier. Just sign up and hang out with me every so often. Create from blank. And now in here, I'm just going to enter a text module and say, get your and I obviously would write this, much more friendly or whatever. If I were actually doing it, probably would make that look nicer, add a picture, etc. But again, for demo purposes, not really necessary. And then I'm going to publish that. Now, if I come back to the main page here, because back to your complexity, this is what I'm trying to address, right? Is because like if I were doing this in real life, I'm going to send people this link. They're going to come in here. They're going to say, "Hey, look, I'm Don Davis. And here's my phone number." There you go. I'm going to check these two boxes. I'm going to click that, and it's going to move to the next step. This was me with the second part. I didn't trigger it properly. So let me flip this over real quick. Again, another 30 seconds. So what I wanted it to do from there was to go to the next step, and I didn't save it that way. There's that. And publish. Now, same. Oh, still did it. Again, live demo. Let me load it again from here because let me go back. Load it from here. I'm only going to do it this last time, and then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But essentially, I think everybody would get the gist. Like, look, we just build a simple funnel. You put the link to this funnel on your web page. You put it out on social media. Here's the link. I click on that link. If I were to be the one getting it, now it's brought me back to ChatGPT. I could go run the thing. So, I mean, to me, like if you have a business today and you don't have a CRM that offers some way of creating funnels, or you don't have, let's say, ClickFunnels or Go High Level, or a platform to go do this kind of stuff. I mean, I do think HubSpot offers it as well. But like whatever way that you're going to use, like you have to think of like person's on social media, they're checking out your stuff, they like what you're saying, they resonate with it, now they want to move to the next step. I also would say to people, like if you come back to LinkedIn, you go, hey, look, in my profile page, because even in mine, I oftentimes will take these featured sort of things, right? I've got one for booking a call with me, and then this one for like ways to actually create content and have lots of prompts for creating content. So that's what this thing is. But you just come back into any one of your posts on LinkedIn and click the three dots and say, hey, look, I'd like to make this one a featured on top of my profile post. And what happens, I hope I didn't remove it. What happens whenever you click on remove from featured? No, it was in the featured on top of profile. So now if I click refresh, it should be there in the right here. So it's in the featured items. So when somebody's looking at your profile, they'll see like whatever thing first. And to me, it's, again, another way to get people to see the things that you're posting about that you think people can get value from whenever they want to be clients of yours. So